The vast domed chamber of the Great Hall of the Interstellar Concord glimmered with the reflections of 100 different species. Diplomats and ambassadors from dozens of worlds moved through the space with practiced grace. Their bodies, some humanoid, others utterly alien, adorned with the marks of their office. Today's agenda seemed routine: trade agreements, resource allocations, cultural exchange programs, the usual bureaucratic machinery of interstellar governance. Ambassador Serix of the Zandari stood near the central podium, his iridescent scales catching the light as he shifted nervously. Unlike the casual confidence he typically exuded, today he trembled visibly, four-fingered hands clasping and unclasping as he waited to address the assembly. Seated not far from him was Counselor Mira Santos, the young but determined representative of Earth. Her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot that accentuated her serious expression. Despite Earth's relatively recent admission to the Concord, Santos carried herself with the quiet assurance of someone who knew her worth, even when others did not. Speaker Anoran of the Velrak species called the session to order, his deep, resonant voice echoing through the chamber. The council recognizes Ambassador Serix of Xandar. Serix moved to the central podium, activating a holographic display that immediately filled the chamber with images of devastation. Several gasps echoed through the crowd as the footage showed Xandari mining colonies under brutal assault. Orbital disruptors, massive weapons platforms capable of destabilizing planetary bodies, hovered above two moons, firing concentrated beams that carved chasms into their surfaces. The Irith Coalition ships were unmistakable, sleek, predatory vessels that moved with terrifying precision. "Esteemed members of the Concord," Serix began, his voice surprisingly steady despite his visible distress. "What you are witnessing is not historical footage. This attack is ongoing. The Irith Coalition has violated our sovereignty and besieged our mining colonies without provocation or warning. Our people are dying." New images appeared. Xandari civilians huddled in underground shelters, many wounded, children crying silently in their parents' arms. A once thriving colony reduced to rubble, with scattered resistance fighters using makeshift weapons against Irith ground forces. "The Xandari are known throughout the galaxy for our energy research, not our military might." Serix continued, "We cannot repel this assault alone. Our defense systems were designed for meteoric deflection and pirate deterrence, not full-scale invasion. I come before you today to formally request military assistance from any Concord member capable of intervention. Without it, my civilization faces extinction within months." Serix's normally melodious voice cracked on the final words. Counselor Trell of the Oran species rose from his seat, extending formal condolences. But his words offered little concrete hope. The council murmured, clearly recognizing the severity of the humanitarian crisis, but hesitant to commit forces to what could become a protracted conflict. "What precisely are you requesting, Ambassador?" Speaker Anoran asked, his tone measured but not unkind. Serix gestured, and the hologram shifted to show Irith warships raining kinetic projectiles on a Xandari habitat dome. "We need ships, soldiers, anyone who can help us push back the Irith Coalition before they crack our moons in two and render our home system uninhabitable." The chamber erupted in debate. The Harn delegate pledged medical supplies and refugee support, but explicitly declined military involvement. The Nexus representative raised concerns about jurisdictional precedent. The Alari questioned whether intervention might trigger a wider war with the Irith, who controlled significant trade routes in the galactic southwest quadrant. "While we deliberate," Serix reminded them, "my people starve in underground warrens or die in orbital bombardments." As the discussion circled endlessly around procedural concerns and budget constraints, Counselor Santos rose unexpectedly from her seat. The human delegation, being relatively junior in the Concord, rarely spoke during major security deliberations. Earth can deploy a rapid response fleet within 10 days, she said clearly, her voice cutting through the chamber's murmurs. We have the ships, the personnel, and the tactical doctrine necessary to assist the Zandari. A stunned silence fell, followed by a ripple of what might have been suppressed laughter from several delegates. Earth was widely considered a technological laggard in the galactic community, while humans had achieved faster-than-light travel independently. Their military hardware relied heavily on what most species considered antiquated technologies: kinetic weapons, missile systems, and heavily armored vessels rather than the energy shields and quantum disruption technologies favored by advanced species like the Irith. Counselor Santos, Speaker Anoran said carefully, "While we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, this conflict may require capabilities beyond your current military doctrine." Santos stood straighter. "With respect, Speaker, Earth's combined arms approach and volume engagement strategies are precisely what this situation calls for. The Irith rely on technological superiority and individual ship performance. Our doctrines were developed to counter exactly such advantages. Your ships lack quantum shields," Counselor Vex of the Nexus pointed out. "Your primary armaments are still railguns and missile systems. How would you protect yourselves, let alone the Zandari?" "By not fighting the way the Irith expect," Santos replied simply. "Earth has spent centuries perfecting asymmetric warfare, combined arms operations, and saturated response tactics. Sometimes, Speaker, the oldest solutions are the most effective against enemies who have forgotten them." Serix looked at the human with desperate hope in his eyes. "The Zandari would welcome Earth's assistance, however it might come." Speaker Anoran studied the human counselor thoughtfully. "Very well. We will note Earth's offer of military support. This council will continue to examine all options for addressing the Zandari crisis. Session adjourned for deliberation." As the assembly dispersed, Santos approached Serix directly. "Ambassador, I meant what I said. Earth is prepared to help." Serix's large, faceted eyes regarded her carefully. "Forgive me, Counselor, but many here doubt Earth's capabilities. The Irith Coalition fields dreadnoughts with disruptor cannons that can crack moons. Can your ships truly stand against such power?" Santos smiled grimly. "Ambassador, throughout human history, it's never been about having the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. It's about how you use what you have. And humans have been perfecting the art of war against superior forces for thousands of years." On Earth's moon, Luna, General Raj Patel strode through the United Defense Coalition Command Center, his footsteps purposeful as junior officers scrambled out of his way. The UDC had been formed 60 years earlier, shortly after humanity's first contact with the Conquered, as a unified Earth military command incorporating the best elements from formerly competing national forces. "Mobilization status," he demanded as he entered the central war room. Major Elena Kim, his chief strategist, gestured to the holographic display dominating the center of the room. 100 ships conscripted and being retrofitted for deep space engagement. 20,000 troops on standby. Munitions are at 84% of optimal, but manufacturing is running at maximum capacity to address the shortfall. Patel nodded, studying the fleet composition: 40 destroyers, 30 frigates, 20 corvettes, and 10 specialized electronic warfare vessels. Not a massive force by Conquered standards, but substantial for Earth. "Has Project Shockwave been briefed to the captains?" Kim nodded. "Yes, sir. Synchronized missile swarms, multi-vector assault patterns, and electromagnetic warfare to jam Irith communications. Captain Vega has been running simulations with the 1st Flank Squadron since the orders came through." "And ground operations?" Colonel Andre Moreau stepped forward, his weathered face serious. 20,000 troops preparing for combined arms assault. Sir, we've analyzed the Zandari terrain from the data they provided. The plains of Solath offer the best opportunity for our approach. open enough for armor deployment but with sufficient geological features for artillery positioning. He manipulated the hologram to show a three-dimensional map of the Zandari surface. We're planning for orbital drops synchronized with ground artillery, air support from modified gunships, and infiltration teams to disable those disruptors. Patel stared at the hologram, then at his officers. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't pretend this will be easy. The Irith Coalition has technology we can only dream of. Their ships can take hits that would vaporize ours. Their ground troops have personal shields that can deflect most conventional ammunition. He paused. But they've grown complacent. They rely on technological superiority rather than tactical innovation. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy who refuses to fight by their rules. He expanded the hologram to show the entire Zandari system. Our mission is straightforward. Break the Irith blockade, disable their orbital disruptors, and secure the Zandari colonies. We deploy in 7 days. Dismissed. As his officers filed out, Patel turned to Kim. Elena, be honest with me. What are our actual chances? Kim's expression remained professional, but her eyes betrayed concern. If we fight them conventionally, 0. Their ships would cut through ours before we could even get into railgun range. She manipulated the hologram to show missile trajectory patterns. But Project Shockwave isn't conventional. The Irith have never faced a saturated missile attack of this magnitude, coordinated with electronic warfare. Their systems are designed to counter energy weapons and quantum torpedoes, not thousands of relatively primitive projectiles coming from dozens of vectors simultaneously. And if they adapt quickly, then we lose ships, possibly all of them. Kim met his gaze directly. But we only need to hold them long enough for ground forces to neutralize those orbital disruptors. After that, the playing field levels considerably. Patel nodded grimly. Make sure every captain understands. We're not trying to win a conventional naval engagement. We're creating a window for Moreau's ground forces. That's the mission. Understood, sir. For the next week, Earth crews trained intensively. Destroyer captains practiced three-dimensional maneuvers in simulated asteroid fields. Missile technicians drilled volley timing until they could launch hundreds of projectiles in coordinated waves. Electronic warfare specialists refined jamming frequencies, calibrated to disrupt Irith encryption protocols. Ground forces rehearsed rapid deployment from orbit to surface, practicing combined arms coordination under simulated enemy fire. Meanwhile, Irith spy probes detected unusual activity in Earth's military installations. Admiral Kale, commander of the Irith Vanguard assaulting the Zandari system, received the intelligence with skepticism. Humans, he scoffed, his crest rising in amusement as he addressed his senior officers. The primitives with the kinetic weapons and unshielded hulls. Let them come. It will save us the trouble of hunting them down later when we expand beyond Zandari space. Commander Lyran, leader of the Irith ground forces, shared his superior's contempt. Their ground tactics are equally primitive. They still rely on distributed command structures, rather than neural-linked battle networks. Their armor cannot withstand even our smallest disruptor weapons. Admiral Kale expanded the tactical hologram in his command center. Nevertheless, I want patrols positioned to intercept them if they actually dare to enter the system. The Coalition does not tolerate interference, even from insignificant species. The human fleet materialized at the jump point into the Zandari system. 40 ships arranged in a three-dimensional defensive formation. Immediately, they detected the Irith Vanguard moving to intercept. 60 ships, including 5 massive dreadnoughts and 15 heavy cruisers. The disparity in firepower was enormous. Aboard the lead destroyer, Intrepid, Captain Zara Vega received the sensor data with grim determination. Right on schedule, all ships, maintain formation, prepare for Phase 1. As the Irith fleet approached, their dreadnoughts unleashed brilliant beams of energy, instantly vaporizing 2 human frigates at the formation's edge. The human fleet began to fall back, apparently in disarray, retreating toward Xandar's asteroid belt. Admiral Kale watched with satisfaction from his flagship. Predictable. They realized their error too late. Press the advantage. Don't let them regroup. The Irith fleet pursued, accelerating to catch the seemingly fleeing humans. As they approached the dense asteroid field, the human formation suddenly split into 3 distinct groups, each taking a different vector through the field. "They're trying to lose us in the asteroids," Kale observed. "Typical primitive tactics. Divide the fleet, 3 pursuit groups. Don't let them escape." The Irith fleet split accordingly, each group following one segment of the human forces. As they penetrated deeper into the asteroid field, the human ships abruptly reversed course, and from concealed positions among the larger asteroids, additional human vessels appeared. "Phase 2, Captain Vega ordered. "Execute missile swarm deployment." In perfect synchronization, human destroyers and frigates launched their payloads, not the handful of missiles typical of naval engagements, but hundreds from each vessel, creating a dense cloud of projectiles that filled space in all directions. Captain Mitchell's squadron, emerging from behind a massive asteroid, added their volleys to the assault. 300 missiles inbound, an Irith tactical officer reported, panic in his voice. "Point defense systems engaging, but there are too many targets." The Irith ship's defensive systems, designed to counter a small number of sophisticated projectiles, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the human assault. Missiles detonated against quantum shields, the cumulative energy drain causing shield failures across multiple vessels simultaneously. 2 dreadnoughts suffered catastrophic shield collapses, leaving their hulls exposed to the second wave of missiles already in flight. "Impossible!" Kale shouted as explosions blossomed across his fleet. "Recalibrate defenses! Counterattack formation!" But as the Irith ships attempted to regroup, the human electronic warfare vessels activated their jammers, flooding Irith communication channels with overwhelming interference. Ship-to-ship coordination collapsed. Targeting systems received corrupted data. Friendly fire incidents multiplied as Irith cruisers fired on their own vessels in the confusion. "I've lost contact with the 3rd battle group," an Irith communications officer reported. "Shield strength across the fleet is dropping below critical levels." Kale stared at the tactical display in disbelief as his carefully organized formation disintegrated into chaos. A third of his ships were already disabled or destroyed, and the humans were now pressing their advantage, railguns firing with devastating accuracy at the compromised Irith vessels. "Fall back," he ordered finally. "Regroup at the outer system boundary. We need to reassess our approach." As the space battle unfolded, Colonel Moreau's brigade executed their own assault on the Xandari surface. 12 massive drop pods descended through the atmosphere toward the plains of Solath, where Irith ground forces had established their primary control center for the orbital disruptors. The pods deployed atmospheric mines in their wake, simple but effective countermeasures that detonated as Irith interceptors attempted to destroy the incoming human transports. On the ground, Xandari guerrilla fighters led by Lieutenant Raval emerged from hidden bunkers, ambushing disoriented Irith patrols caught between the falling human forces and the native resistance. Commander Liran received fragmented reports of the human landings with growing frustration. "Deploy the shock battalions," he ordered. "Crush these primitives quickly, before they can establish a foothold." 7,000 Irith elite troops advanced across the plains of Solath in tight formation, their personal shields glimmering in the alien sunlight, disruptor rifles at the ready. They moved with absolute confidence toward the human landing zones, expecting a swift and decisive victory. They never saw the artillery batteries hidden in the foothills. As the Irith column reached the center of the plain, 14 massive railguns, each capable of firing high-velocity projectiles over extreme distances, opened fire simultaneously. The barrage wasn't aimed at individual soldiers, but at the ground beneath them, creating massive shockwaves that disrupted shield coherence and threw entire squads into disarray. As the Irith troops struggled to regroup, attack gunships swept in from concealment, their rotary cannons firing depleted uranium rounds that, while individually unable to penetrate Irith shields, could through sheer volume eventually overwhelm their energy reserves. Mechanized Irith transports, suddenly exposed, made priority targets for precision artillery strikes. "They're everywhere," an Irith squad leader reported frantically. "Multiple attack vectors. Can't establish a defensive perimeter." Luran watched in mounting horror as his elite forces, trained for glorious frontal assaults against conventional opposition, found themselves caught in a lethal crossfire of artillery, air support, and infantry ambushes. His neural-linked battle network, designed for coordinated advances, became a liability as panic spread from one soldier to another through the system. Meanwhile, human special operations teams infiltrated the underground facilities, housing the controls for the orbital disruptors. These small, highly trained squads bypassed the main Irith defenses entirely, using Zandari-provided intelligence to navigate maintenance tunnels and access restricted areas. Within hours, they had disabled 2 of the 4 primary disruptor control centers, effectively neutralizing the Irith's ability to continue their moon-cracking campaign. As reports of ground losses mounted and communication with the fleet remained sporadic due to human jamming, Commander Luran finally ordered a general withdrawal to defensible positions around the Zandari High City. His forces, reduced by nearly 40%, retreated in disarray, abandoning equipment and, in some cases, wounded comrades in their haste to escape the human combined arms assault. In orbit, General Patel received confirmation of the ground success and authorized a full counteroffensive. The remaining human ships, coordinating with Zandari defense platforms that had been reactivated by engineering teams, pressed their attack against the disorganized Irith fleet. Admiral Kale, unable to re-establish effective command and control due to ongoing electronic warfare, ordered a full withdrawal from the Zandari system. Of the original 60-ship Irith force, 28 were destroyed outright, 12 were captured by combined human Zandari boarding parties, and the remainder retreated in various states of damage. On the ground, Irith's strength had been reduced from 15,000 to fewer than 4,000 combat-effective troops, most now cut off from orbital support and surrounded by human Zandari forces. Within 3 days of the initial engagement, the Irith invasion of the Zandari system had been comprehensively defeated. In the aftermath, Ambassador Sarix coordinated relief efforts, directing human medical teams to the most severely affected Zandari settlements. Engineering corps from both species worked to repair orbital defense arrays and stabilize the damaged moons. Joint salvage operations recovered what they could from downed human warships, honoring the fallen with solemn ceremonies that blended Earth and Zandari traditions. The Interstellar Concord convened an emergency session to address the stunning turn of events. Holographic feeds displayed the human victory in vivid detail, causing shock among delegates who had dismissed Earth's military potential. "They overcame the Irith with antiquated weaponry," Delegate Vex exclaimed, mandibles clicking in astonishment. Speaker Anoran called for order as the chamber erupted in excited discussion. Sarix stood before the assembly, his posture now tall and confident, the desperation of his earlier appearance replaced by profound gratitude. "The Zandari people owe their continued existence to Earth," he announced formally. "What the Concord debated, they acted upon. What many thought impossible, they achieved. We petition this body to recognize Earth's contribution not merely as military assistance, but as a fundamental evolution in our collective security doctrine." Throughout the chamber, representatives from smaller species whispered among themselves, many already drafting requests for military liaisons with Earth. Some larger powers, particularly the Alari Dominion, observed the proceedings with visible unease, clearly reassessing the balance of power within the Concord. 10 days after the decisive battle, General Patel and Councillor Santos addressed the full Concord Assembly, presenting the final statistics of the campaign. The Irith invasion force had been effectively annihilated, the Zandari moon stabilized, and civilian casualties kept to a minimum. Earth forces had lost 12 ships and 450 personnel, a remarkably low toll given the technological disparity between the combatants. The success of this operation, Patel explained, wasn't about having superior technology. It was about employing the right tactics against an opponent who had grown complacent in their advantages. Combined arms doctrine, electronic warfare, and coordinated missile saturation provided a counter to Irith technological superiority. Santos continued where he left off. Earth doesn't seek to dominate or to replace existing security structures within the Concord, but we do offer our expertise in asymmetric warfare and combined arms operations to any member who wishes to incorporate these approaches into their defense planning. The Council deliberated for mere hours before unanimously passing the Xandar Defense Accord, which granted Earth permanent advisory seats on collective defense councils and established a framework for military cooperation between Concord members. The Irith Coalition, facing the humiliation of defeat by a supposedly inferior power, sued for peace, ceding disputed border sectors and withdrawing their remaining forces from contested regions. In the months that followed, the key figures of the conflict found themselves adjusting to new realities. Ambassador Sarix dedicated a memorial on Xandar Prime, honoring both Xandari civilians and human military personnel who had given their lives in the defense of his world. In his dedication speech, he spoke of the unexpected alliance that transcended technological barriers and reminded us that courage and innovation can overcome even the most daunting odds. Councillor Santos began drafting comprehensive, interstellar defense integration protocols, working with representatives from a dozen species to create training programs that would incorporate human tactical doctrines into existing Concord defense structures. Her status within the diplomatic corps rose dramatically, and she found herself welcomed into councils that had previously excluded Earth representatives. General Patel received the Concord's highest military honor, the Star of Unified Defense, in a ceremony attended by delegations from 30 worlds. In his acceptance speech, he warned against complacency, noting that victory today does not guarantee security tomorrow. The greatest threat to peace is the belief that our current methods will suffice against future challenges. We must continue to adapt, to innovate, and above all, to stand united. Admiral Kale and Commander Liran faced courts-martial upon their return to Irith space, charged with catastrophic failure in the execution of their duties. Their defense, that no one could have anticipated the effectiveness of primitive human tactics, was rejected by the Coalition High Command, which had begun a fundamental reassessment of their military doctrine in light of the defeat. On the fringes of the galaxy, automated sensor arrays detected unusual energy signatures beyond the galactic rim, signs of massive objects moving in formation, unlike any known Concord or Coalition vessel. The data was flagged for analysis, a subtle indicator that Earth's shock and awe doctrine might soon face challenges beyond anything yet encountered in known space. As these distant anomalies approached, the newfound alliance between humans and the various species of the Concord continued to strengthen, preparing for whatever might emerge from the darkness between the stars. The Great Hall of the Interstellar Concord was packed to capacity. Delegations from every member species gathered for what promised to be a historic session. 2 months had passed since the liberation of the Xandari system, and the political landscape of the galaxy had shifted dramatically in that time. Speaker Anoran called the assembly to order. Today, we formally ratify the Comprehensive Defense Integration Treaty, establishing joint training protocols, shared tactical databases, and rapid response capabilities across Concord space. On the main floor, Councillor Santos sat beside Ambassador Sarix, both watching as representatives rose one by one to pledge their support for the treaty. Even species that had initially expressed skepticism about human military doctrine now voiced enthusiastic endorsement. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you first addressed the council?" Santos asked quietly. Serix's faceted eyes reflected the chamber's lights. "In my darkest moments, I feared I was witnessing the end of my civilization. Now we stand at the beginning of a new era of cooperation." He turned to face her directly. "Your people have changed the course of galactic history, Counselor." "We only did what anyone would do when faced with injustice," she replied. "No," Serix said firmly. "Many species would have calculated the risks and decided the potential cost outweighed the moral imperative. Humans acted when others merely deliberated." Their conversation was interrupted as Speaker Anoran announced the treaty's unanimous ratification. Applause erupted throughout the chamber, a rare display of emotion in the usually staid proceedings. As the formal session concluded, delegates gathered in smaller groups, continuing discussions that would shape interstellar politics for decades to come. Santos found herself approached by representatives from species that had previously ignored Earth's delegation entirely. "Counselor," the Alari diplomat said, his translucent appendages gesturing formally, "my government wishes to establish a direct military liaison with your United Defense Coalition. Perhaps we could discuss the particulars over refreshments?" Similar conversations unfolded throughout the chamber. Earth, once dismissed as a technological backwater, now found itself at the center of a fundamental shift in galactic security thinking. The primitive humans had demonstrated that innovation and adaptability could overcome even the most advanced technology, a lesson not lost on powers both large and small. In a quiet corner, General Patel conferred with Colonel Moreau and Major Kim, reviewing preliminary reports on the strange energy signatures detected beyond the galactic rim. "The pattern suggests artificial origin," Kim said, her voice low. "Whatever's out there, it's not a natural phenomenon." Moreau studied the data with a frown. "If these readings are accurate, we're looking at a formation larger than anything the Conquered or the Coalition has ever fielded." Patel nodded grimly. "Which means our next challenge may make the Irith look like a minor skirmish." He glanced across the chamber at the diverse species mingling in newfound cooperation. "At least we won't face it alone." As the reception continued, few noticed the subtle alert on Speaker Anoran's personal communicator, or the brief consultation with his aides. The information would be shared with the full council soon enough. Long-range probes had confirmed that the approaching anomalies were indeed vessels of unknown design and extraordinary size. Their trajectory would bring them into conquered space within 6 months. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. The Zandari crisis had forged unexpected alliances and revealed the value of Earth's unique approach to warfare. Now, as an unknown threat loomed on the horizon, those alliances would be tested in ways no one could yet imagine. For the humans of the United Defense Coalition, the challenge ahead represented both danger and opportunity. They had proven their worth against the Irith. Whatever emerged from beyond the galactic rim would face not a fragmented collection of individual species, but a unified force that combined the best aspects of each civilization's approach to defense. Ambassador Serix joined General Patel and his officers, sensing the seriousness of their discussion. "You've received news," he said. It wasn't a question. Patel nodded. "Potentially concerning news. Yes. But this time, we have the luxury of preparation." He looked around at the gathered representatives of a dozen worlds, and considerably more allies than we had 2 months ago. Serix's expression conveyed determination. "The Zandari will stand with Earth. Whatever comes. You gave everything to save my people. We will do no less for yours." Similar sentiments echoed throughout the chamber as word of the approaching anomalies began to spread. The Conquered, long characterized by procedural caution and diplomatic hedging, found itself united by a common purpose. Earth's example had awakened something long dormant in many species: the willingness to act decisively in defense of shared principles. As the reception drew to a close, Counselor Santos found herself standing beside Speaker Anoran, gazing out through the chamber's vast, transparent dome at the stars beyond. "Your species has surprised us all, Counselor," Anoran said. "When you first joined the Concord, many dismissed humans as an interesting curiosity, relatively harmless newcomers who would contribute little of significance to galactic affairs." Santos smiled slightly. "We're accustomed to being underestimated. A trait that has served you well," Anoran observed, "and perhaps will serve us all in the challenges ahead." He gestured toward the stars. "Whatever comes from beyond the rim, the Concord faces it as a more unified entity than ever before. That may prove to be your people's greatest contribution, not your military doctrine, impressive though it is, but your ability to inspire collective action." "Humans have a saying," Santos replied. "Necessity is the mother of invention. The Zandari crisis created necessity. The invention was already there in the form of cooperation. It just needed the right catalyst." As they spoke, in orbital shipyards throughout Concord space, new vessels were under construction, incorporating both advanced energy technologies and Earth's more primitive, but unexpectedly effective systems. On a dozen worlds, military officers from disparate species trained together, learning to coordinate their unique capabilities into combined arms operations that transcended individual limitations. The galaxy prepared for an uncertain future, transformed by the unexpected alliance between a desperate people and a supposedly backward species that had delivered not just military victory, but a new paradigm for interstellar security. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors, offering not dominance but partnership. And as the unknown vessels continued their inexorable approach from beyond the rim, that partnership would face its ultimate test, a challenge that would determine the future of not just one species or one system, but of civilization throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Serix, standing among his human allies as they planned for the trials ahead, found himself reflecting on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. His people's darkest hour had become the catalyst for their greatest hope. The aliens they had desperately called upon for support had indeed delivered shock and awe, not just to their enemies, but to a galaxy that had forgotten the power of unified purpose and innovative thinking. Whatever emerged from the darkness between the stars would find not isolated worlds ripe for conquest, but a Concord transformed by the human example, ready, resilient, and resolved to stand together against any threat, no matter how vast or mysterious it might be.